What happens when a kingdom's future is gambled on ambition? A king's deathbed promise to his daughter should have guaranteed her rule, but instead, it plunged England into 2 decades of bloodshed and chaos. In this kingdom, trust was fleeting, loyalty was bought, and betrayal came at every turn. This is the story of the Anarchy, a time when England tore itself apart for the crown. But who truly paid the price for power? Our story begins in 1135 with the death of King Henry I of England. Henry had only one legitimate son, William, but he drowned in 1120 in the tragic White Ship disaster, a catastrophe that robbed Henry of his male heir and left England vulnerable. This tragedy forced Henry to look to his daughter, Empress Matilda, as the only legitimate heir. Henry knew this decision would be controversial, as the idea of a female ruler was nearly unthinkable at the time. To secure her future, Henry made his barons swear loyalty to Matilda, forcing them to publicly acknowledge her as his successor. For many of these nobles, however, the oath was a source of quiet discomfort, a binding pledge to a woman in a male-dominated world. But as long as Henry lived, they kept their promises. All that changed with Henry's death. Within days, his nephew, Stephen of Blois, seized the moment. Racing across the English Channel, he claimed the throne, relying on his charm and his support from powerful nobles and the church. The thought of a female ruler was repellent to many, and Stephen leveraged these sentiments, securing his allies quickly. Matilda, however, would not surrender. She began rallying her supporters and preparing for the brutal struggle that would tear the kingdom apart. The Anarchy was defined by 3 towering figures, each with a claim, a cause, and an unbreakable will. First, there was Empress Matilda, the legitimate heir, unrelenting in her claim to the throne. She was no stranger to power or conflict, and her determination to claim her birthright made her a force to be reckoned with. With her half-brother, Robert of Gloucester, and her uncle, King David I of Scotland, Matilda launched her fight for the throne. Her opponent was King Stephen, charming and popular but plagued by indecision. Though he secured the throne, Stephen struggled to maintain control. His reign was marked by frequent betrayals, as powerful nobles saw opportunities in the chaos. To complicate matters, Stephen's wife, Queen Matilda of Boulogne, was fiercely loyal and even commanded forces in his name. The power struggle wasn't just a war for a crown, it became a war of families, of loyalties, and of survival. Then came Henry of Anjou, Matilda's son. Young and ambitious, Henry represented England's future. Unlike those before him, Henry knew that the kingdom needed stability, not just a ruler. His arrival in England would turn the tide, but the price of peace would be heavy. As these 3 figures fought for control, England itself became the victim. The people faced a new kind of horror, one without the rules of war, where ambition tore apart towns, families, and lives. But how far could this war go before it destroyed the kingdom completely? With Matilda and Stephen fighting for the throne, law and order disintegrated. Nobles, freed from centralized control, fortified castles, collected taxes, and ruled their territories with impunity. These hastily built strongholds, known as adulterine castles, became physical symbols of the chaos. For commoners, each new castle was a reminder of the oppression they faced, a monument to the unchecked power of the barons. Imagine a land where law no longer exists. Armed barons took what they wanted, towns fell silent, and travelers feared the night. Chroniclers of the time wrote of God and his saints asleep, capturing the despair that gripped the country. Raids, theft, and burning fields became common, and peasants were left to survive as best they could. Families faced starvation as crops were seized, and entire villages were abandoned. The struggle between 2 rulers had become a living nightmare for ordinary people. The Anarchy wasn't just a political struggle. It was fought in castles and on battlefields. Siege warfare defined the era, as both sides fortified strongholds and vied for control over key locations. Among these clashes, the Battle of Lincoln in 1141 stands out as a defining moment. At Lincoln, Stephen's luck ran out. Fighting bravely, he was ultimately outnumbered and betrayed, falling into Matilda's hands as a prisoner. For a moment, it seemed her victory was assured, but when she attempted to claim London, her hopes were shattered. The people turned against her, rejecting her claim to the throne. Though she was the legitimate heir, the barons, clergy, and commoners balked at the idea of a woman as their sovereign. Matilda's strength and defiance couldn't overcome a kingdom's deep-seated resistance to female rule. In England, acceptance and legitimacy mattered as much as any army. Another pivotal moment was the Siege of Oxford, where Matilda narrowly escaped capture. Surrounded and facing certain defeat, Matilda disguised herself in white, slipping through Stephen's lines under cover of night and snow. Her escape became legendary, a testament to her resilience and determination, yet even such heroism could not sway her people's loyalty. In the shadow of war, loyalty was little more than a word. Nobles switched sides freely, driven by survival, self-interest, or sheer ambition. Figures like Geoffrey de Mandeville epitomized this opportunistic loyalty. Excommunicated and notorious for his betrayals, Geoffrey changed allegiances with the wind, taking advantage of the chaos for personal gain. The church too held immense power and used it to sway the conflict. It initially backed Stephen, offering him legitimacy, but its loyalty was never certain. In medieval England, a king's power depended heavily on religious approval. The church could make or break rulers, turning popular opinion with a single decree. For Matilda, however, the struggle was even more complex. As a woman, her right to rule was questioned not just by her rivals, but by the very fabric of her society. Even when she won battles and captured her enemy, she faced an invisible force, centuries of bias that resisted her claim. 2 decades of bloodshed, betrayal, and chaos had left England in ruins. The throne remained contested, and peace seemed impossible. But with no clear victor in sight, could England ever know stability again? Or would it take yet another generation to restore the kingdom? By the early 1150s, exhaustion had set in on both sides. Neither Stephen nor Matilda could claim a decisive victory, and England was weary of conflict. Enter Henry of Anjou, Matilda's son, a man whose ambition, charisma, and vision to unify England offered a glimmer of hope. When Henry invaded England in 1153, his strength and resolve inspired loyalty among the disillusioned nobles. Even Stephen, worn out and defeated, realized that the war could not go on forever. In 1153, the Treaty of Wallingford was signed, ending the bloodshed. In a rare compromise, Stephen agreed to name Henry as his heir, ensuring the throne's stability and bringing England out of the darkness. Though peace was restored, the anarchy left scars. Scarred landscapes, dotted with castles and fortified strongholds, and a wary nobility whose power had only grown. The anarchy left a deep mark on England. It exposed the dangers of a weak monarchy, a divided nobility, and the unthinkable cost of unchecked ambition. For Matilda, it was a struggle not only for power, but for respect, in a world that denied her right to rule. Her fight, though ultimately unsuccessful, set the stage for future female rulers to claim what she could not. For the monarchy, the trauma of the anarchy reinforced the need for stronger lines of succession, the rule of law, and a powerful crown to keep the nobility in check. Under Henry II, England would see reforms that strengthened the monarchy, stabilized the kingdom, and safeguarded it against another collapse. From this period of darkness rose a more resilient England, a nation that would hold tighter to its crown and more closely guard its peace.